Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our September 6th Kupuna Caucus meeting. My name is Corey Chun. I'm the House co-convener for the Kupuna Caucus. Thank you for joining us on this Friday afternoon. So I'm just gonna get right into the agenda, but this is, our weekly meeting. Um, and first up, we have our protected federal nursing home staffing standards. It's a short presentation by Kaylee Lopez and ARP Hawaii.
Sorry, if I could either be able to share my screen or if Charles or someone is going to put
Go ahead,
the deck
Kaylee.
up. Okay, thank
Share
you.
now.
Thank you. Now I have to be able to actually do that. I'm going to put this in presentation mode. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Here we go. One, really appreciate the opportunity to be able to put this, get this item on the agenda for the Kupuna Caucus. It is a federal matter and it relates to CMS's recent rule that was adopted by CMS in April of this year. And specifically, it's the minimum staffing standards for long-term care facilities for institutions that receive payment from Medicaid, for Medicaid and Medicare. And it includes payment transparency reporting in the final rules. It says final rules. Basically, there haven't been standards across the country related specifically to the number of staffing hours per resident per day. These different states have had their own rules related to this. And again, this primarily focuses on, or specifically focuses on nursing homes that accept Medicare and Medicaid. What we've seen across the country is that a lack of federal staffing requirements have resulted in different standards in nursing homes. And of course, many of the residents in our nursing homes are the most vulnerable and really rely heavily on direct care staff to meet their daily needs, whether it's going to the bathroom, feeding, changing clothes, just a wide range of that. And studies have shown that nursing homes with higher staffing levels provide better care to residents. These are the rules or the current requirements, staffing requirements required in the administrative rules that were adopted by CMS. So a total of 3.48 hours, 48 hours per resident. Again, it has to include these specific types of staffing requirements, whether it's a registered nurse, a nurse aide, or as we say in Hawaii, CNAs, and then also a combination of either an RN, a nurse aide, or LPN, as well as vocational nurse. And I'm hoping, Audrey, if you can double check to make sure I'm using the right PowerPoint. This looks a little different than what I saw before.
No, you are.
Okay, and then for our current our facilities here in Hawaii, there's 42, and currently 90% of the Hawaii nursing homes actually meet or exceed the number of hours that are required federally. So with the federal requirement being what it is, we actually exceed that, and again, on average, actually meet a per hour resident, hours per resident at about 4.69. So Hawaii is doing really well And that's what we want to continue to see happen. So based on data we received from CMS, about 100% of the nursing homes are currently meeting the final RN 5.5 hours per resident. And actually an average of RNs across the home is across the state is really at 1.53. So that's really great. We've got about 65% of our nursing homes are meeting the certified nursing aid requirement established by federal rule. Again, that's at 2.45, and on average here in Hawaii, we're actually at 2.77. So as you can see, the nursing homes in Hawaii are doing very well. The other thing is, you know, as CMS rolls this out and has nursing homes begin to meet these requirements, they have about 3 to 5 years to meet the requirements. And again, it varies depending on the different standards. But non-rural areas have until May 10 of 2027. And rural areas have until May 10, 2029 to meet the minimum staffing standards. The thing that's important to note, and we are ARP and others, you know, have been a little bit worried about our ability to meet all of the standards 100%, although we're very close. And the key there is that nursing homes can get an exemption if, you know, if they're located in areas where there's a workforce shortage and where they can show they've made a good faith effort to hire required staff. So this is important to ensure that any of our Hawaii nursing homes that do have, and we are aware, and that's been conversations with this caucus and others around staffing issues and the need to make sure workforce issues are being addressed. So one of the things that I think is important is it's an important step forward to improve quality of care. As noted earlier in my presentation, there's a direct correlation between the number of direct care staff, nurses, aides, to the positive outcomes for residents. So nursing homes with higher levels of care have better overall ratings and better health inspection ratings and much fewer instances of abuse. So one of the key things, you know, as we look at this, and I'll provide some context as soon as I stop sharing, we're clear that many of our families who have their loved ones in nursing homes really do expect that their loved ones will receive the care that we'd like them to. Our kupuna are very vulnerable while they're in these nursing homes. So nursing homes in America receive more than $80 billion annually from taxpayers through Medicare and Medicaid. Poorly staffed nursing homes are not meeting needs of kupuna. And the new staffing rule means families in kupuna will get more of what they need. Nursing facilities will be held accountable to ensure our kupuna are well cared for. So mainly, I guess, what I am hopeful of and what we wanted to share is our concern of any effort to overturn and weaken these standards. So the reason we're bringing this issue to the Kupuna Caucus and want to be able to have some discussion, if it's allowed, Chair, is right now Congress, when they reconvene in about a week, is considering what's called a Congressional Review Act resolution, which would potentially overturn CMS's administrative rule. And what that would result in is if that Congressional Review Act does pass and has a high enough vote and cannot be vetoed by President Biden, it would mean the CMS and no future CMS administration could issue minimal nursing standard rules ever. And it would require Congress itself to have to develop rules related to nursing standards. So as an example, again, here in Hawaii, I think we're very lucky. When you look at nursing home statistics, Hawaii ranks very high. We're either hitting first, second, third, or fifth in meeting many of the areas that one would want to look at. So the point for folks would be, well, why does Hawaii need the rule if we're doing so well? The truth of the matter is the rules also enable CMS to have the ability for transparency purposes to ensure, especially for for-profit facilities, that those resources are going towards direct care staff. So as an example, in the last 3 years, there has been an increase in funding to these 2 nursing homes. And at the same time, CMS has not seen any significant difference in those resources necessarily being used for direct care staff. Again, this is all around ensuring that our kupuna are getting the kind of care that they should get. And again, this is a minimum, not a cap, but a minimum in the staff that should be made available. And the other piece is making sure that even for those nurses and staff, that they aren't overburdened, that there's enough folks having to get the work done, and that you have, so you don't have perhaps two staff that are having to care for, 30 people during an evening shift or whatever the case may be. So the concern really for CMS, my sense is from looking at it, is having nursing home administrators and companies putting a priority on the staffing that really make a critical difference in the outcome for our kupuna that are in nursing homes. So our concern and our request and hope of the Kupuna Caucus, depending on what kind of action you're able to take, is we'd love for our Hawaii delegation, primarily in the Senate for now, because it requires fewer votes to pass a CRA in the Senate, to hear from the Kupuna Caucus about its interest and concern for kupuna in our nursing homes, and really supporting the continuation of the CMS nursing home rules. Again, there are other issues at play. There's a lawsuit filed in Texas to try to address this. And the Senate, again, could very well take this up, we're thinking next week. It's predominantly being sponsored by Republicans, although there are, I think, at least 2 for sure senators. Senator Tester from Montana is a co-sponsor of the Senate CRA. I want to leave it at that. Audrey, have I missed anything, or can you add to what I've shared, if that's okay, Chair Chun?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think let me put it. I think Kelly has covered all the major key points about this particular bill and what our concerns are, and trying to ensure that the CRA is not voted in favor, and that Congress will continue to just work with CMS and trying to ensure that this rule is properly implemented and be carried out with the kind of impact and outcome we like to see across the board. So yes, Hawaii is doing better. We can always do better. Again, Hawaii's doing well, but we can do better. And we do acknowledge that there is a workforce issue. However, given the time frame, they're giving all the states 3 to 5 years, depending if you're a rural community facility versus an urban, but they're giving them time to try to come up to these standards. And of course, they are exemptions that will be allowed for those in the areas that are really difficult, having difficulty finding staff. So, I think it's a fair ruling that CMS is proposing.
And the other thing too is that a Congressional Review Act resolution, we believe, is a little heavy-handed in trying to address the industries, the nursing home industries, concerns about the rules. And we do, as Audrey said, do believe that they're going to be able to work with CMS over these next several years. And we're very supportive of the nursing homes here in Hawaii, and have advocated from our perspective for different issues to support our nursing home industry here in Hawaii, whether it's on the workforce side or funding issues related to Medicaid and Medicare, and having, for example, the state of Hawaii increasing its contribution from 80% to 100%. So, there are different ways that we absolutely see that we want them to be successful. We all need them to be successful. And our hope, again, is that the Kupuna Caucus would be willing to write a letter to our senators at this point to encourage them to, in fact, continue to support the CMS rules and not necessarily consider at all a positive vote on a CRA resolution. I can happy to answer any questions. I don't know if you want to give opportunity for public input, because I see Paige here. Hi, Paige.
Yeah, no, sure. Any questions? I see Paige has a question. Go ahead. Or hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rep. And thank you, Kaylee. And I know, we've connected on this. I think my one request would be that if there was a will by the Kupuna Caucus to take any formal action, that there would also be a request to help fund the additional staff and any additional workforce requirements. So understanding that we have about 3 to 5 years, we would need to add about 100 new CNAs to the mix. Actually, we have updated information, so none of the nursing homes actually meet these standards because of the requirements for the CNAs and the 24/7 RN. And our understanding is that nationally it will cost about $6 billion to fund the additional staff needed if we can find the additional staff. So if we could put in a letter having more funding be available to actually hire more staff, be able to pay for the staff, train the staff so that we can, have the additional 100 CNAs that we need every year to comply, that would be helpful. I'll just note, we did do an analysis. And I think if we're unable to get the staff, so even if there wasn't if you could get an exemption, all of that, we'll see, but that we think it could reduce the number of nursing home beds by about 200 per year. If we're unable to secure that staff. So anything that we can do to get those workforce numbers up, to get the $6 billion to pay for it, would be incredibly helpful. So if we can add that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Chair, can I speak to that real quick?
Go ahead.
I agree that, one of the challenges for many of and Pedro spoke to this more effectively and has a better understanding of what those increases in staffing requirements might be for a facility that isn't already meeting those requirements. My sense is that part of the intention of the rule is also to encourage these nursing facilities to also consider increase in pay for staff, meaning being able to recruit and retain them, because it is a difficult area. So one of the things that I think is a plus is that threshold that we here in Hawaii have to overcome are the CNAs in particular, versus, it might be much more difficult if it were, your registered nurses and such. Not to say that we don't have challenges there as well, but the threshold is lower. But also in that area, it is one of the things that is looked at by CMS and ourselves in ARP's nursing home dashboard is the degree to which there's a high turnover in direct care staff. In some places, it's up to 50%, where there's such a churn. And again, it might be different for nonprofit and state-run nursing facilities, but for sure for profit facilities, the hope and assertion, I think, is that more of those profits should go to caring for the frontline direct care staff rather than shareholders. That's KLE's editorial. It's not in CMS's nor an ARP position. Just letting you all know. But that's I think part of the issue of why I believe CMS said, you know what, here's the priority. You're not going to fund and make sure we our residents are getting the maximum care they need. We're going to force that by saying, here's the priority. They are making abundantly clear that the priority is frontline direct care staff need to be, as Paige said, hired, trained, retained. And I'm hopeful that there's lots of different programs. I know that the long-term care task force and others have been working on this issue of workforce for a good long time. I don't want to take up the whole meeting on this subject. So feel free, Rep. Chun, to cut me off at any point. Thank you.
Okay, I have another hand up from the EOA conference room.
Hi, Rep. Chen, it's Caroline here. We have members in here, and Raylene Tenno has a question, and I believe there's another question that we're going to put in the chat from Shelley. So, Raylene, do you want to ask a question?
I was just kind of curious as to why Congress is, they want to do this heavy-handed with approach and, making it permanent, which, things evolve. So what's the motivation behind it? The heavy-handedness of it?
I can't say for certain. Again, it's predominantly been put forward by members from Republican states. And the position that I believe they're taking in it is the belief that the rules that CMS has issued is an overreach, and don't agree that it's this one size fits all, or as some of them have said, one size fits none. So I'm just quoting what I've read about it. So it really is about the degree to which they think the administration has the authority to, in fact, have adopted and issued these standards. Dr. Lewin might know better, or Paige might know, but that's my understanding of why they've put the resolution forward.
Yeah, I think you're
and
absolutely right, Kaylee. Yeah.
And the concern that they are concerned that these rules could result in facility closures.
Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Let me just read this. So how might the shift of needing more CNAs in facilities have unintended consequences for in-home services? In-home caregiving also has major staffing shortages.
Yeah, this is strictly for federally funded nursing homes. I don't know what the term is, SNFs or whatever they are, and that receive Medicaid and Medicare. That I know of, these rules do not apply to home and community-based type services, but they do relate to again, SNFs. If that's the proper term. Audrey can correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone else. I have no shame in making sure you all are getting the correct information if I'm not the one giving it.
Anyone else?
I
have
guess,
any-
yeah, maybe just a comment to that question. And I know that was also raised in the PABIA meeting earlier today. And right, I think this particular question about the overall shortage in the whole industry, long-term care industry, is really complex. So yes, this particular CMS one is specifically for nursing homes with that receives Medicare, Medicaid funding. But you're right, there's a bigger issue of workforce in general in long-term care. And so I think it's one of the issues. This is where our workforce that we have right now that's going on by different organizations and different leads, I really have to address this because it's the whole continuum that is really impacted by the shortage.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the question really is the concern regarding just the industry, the home care industry, or caregiving industry as a whole. When you look at the continuum, CNAs absolutely are used in other areas, including in home and community-based services. So I think the question was really more about the competition for the limited workforce. And I know that nursing homes have similar challenges for other levels of staffing with, say, hospitals and the like. So it's not to downplay the issue of workforce. It is absolutely a challenge for Hawaii. And at the same time, again, Hawaii's ahead of the curve in that we've been talking about and been working at addressing this for almost 2 years now. So I just have a lot of faith in a lot of people in this room and others that hopefully we can address and get to the point that Paige is talking about, which is getting that workforce. The piece that I would add around ARP is not going to advocate for more funding for staff and training, but I definitely would say that there needs to be more funds allocated for workforce. And if that's the same thing, right now CMS included $100 million as part of the rules for workforce. And I would agree that encouraging an increase in that would be very appropriate. Again,
Okay.
in my opinion.
No, that's that. There's no way to solve that problem without paying fair wages.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Let's check. Anything. So let me, Kaylee, I'll connect with you after the meeting and we'll figure out a way to put together a letter or something that we can float to members. But I just want to circle back with Senator Moriwaki just to kind of figure out our process for getting something like that out.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you could indulge me just a few more minutes. The other thing I would encourage for those who have the experience, if you have firsthand experience or knowledge of situations in nursing homes that you feel compelled you'd like to write a letter, I'm going to volunteer Audrey Suganakagawa and invite you to reach out to her if you're so inclined and interested. We are not encouraging the general public or, folks. I think our you folks and others want to hear from people who have had experiences, and many of them mostly positive, I'm certain. And in this particular case, we want to make sure our congressional delegation, hears directly whether there are or aren't issues, that staffing is in fact an issue, and therefore the rules are important. And they should absolutely actively be working with CMS between now and the end implementation. So if others are interested, I'm going to drop Audrey's email in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Okay. I think we're how with this topic. I'm gonna circle back. Okay.
Yep.
We'll connect after, Kaylee.
Sure.
So let's move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a discussion on guardianship, uniform law. You have Shay. Did I say your name right? Shay.
You did. Yep.
Oh, hey.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Chase Silver. I'm with the Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Last year, we were working on the uniform law bill that tried to rework how guardianship and conservatorship works in Hawaii. That bill obviously died, and then Representative Tarnas asked us to kind of convene a working group in the interim and go over the uniform law in more detail. And so we've been having monthly meetings since the last legislative session. So my goal today is kind of just quickly summarize kind of everything we've discussed and going over for you folks, and then can take any questions and comments about going into the next legislative session. So this group essentially has representation from the judiciary, both the family court and probate court. We have AG's office representation. We have adult protective services, some nonprofits, us and the council, parent organizations, and folks like that. So we have a lot of different voices that come to these meetings, and we talk and review the different aspects of the uniform law. With the uniform law in particular, the first part that we were trying to look at in our working group was just, is the uniform law right for Hawaii? And really briefly, uniform laws are essentially these like massive national laws that people try to get passed in every single state so that we have uniformity across all states. I believe the uniform law last year was like 265 pages. So our working group was slowly working through that entire uniform law. And spoilers, very quickly we found out that for Hawaii, the uniform law in its entirety is probably not the correct fit. Even though Hawaii already uses a uniform law when it comes to guardianship and conservatorship, and this would be an update, it would be a significant update. And when we kind of worked through it with our group, the conversation was that there are a lot of needs to fix in our judicial systems relating to guardianship and conservatorship, but the uniform law itself is not going to fix the specific issues that we're seeing in Hawaii. And so that, I say that so easily now. That did take us like many months and going through the whole document to kind of figure out. We've been having a lot of conversations in our group about what those problems are. And so even though as a group we started to look at the uniform law and looking at guardianship, we quickly realized that there was actually a lot of other issues when it comes to guardianship and conservatorship that we wanted to tackle. And so with Representative Tarnas, we've pivoted from just looking at the uniform law to actually trying to just identify the problems in guardianship and conservatorship that we have in Hawaii. And so we've been working on that for the last couple months. And basically, to keep it kind of brief, a lot of the issues that we've determined, we tried to split them up into 3 different categories. So there are educational issues, there's legislative issues, and then there's procedural issues. Essentially, legislation just means we think it can be fixed with funding or legislation. Procedure means that we believe the judiciary themselves could fix the issue. And then education is just people don't know about certain things, and that's why it causes the problem. So some of the issues that we've kind of discussed and brought forward from the group is education surrounding alternatives to guardianship, as well as what it means to be a guardian or a conservator. So oftentimes what we found is that people become guardians or conservators and they don't exactly know what they're signing up for, or they don't exactly know what they need to be doing, and they need to have further education on what that is. The courts themselves cannot provide that education, so it has to be provided in another way. And then also with alternatives to the guardianship, we found that basically guardianship itself and conservatorship itself is being overused when there's all these other less invasive or less intrusive alternatives to guardianship that work really well. It's just people don't know about them, and then people don't use them, and they're actually cheaper, faster, and easier to get. And so if we just educate individuals on those different alternatives, then they don't need to go into court, have a hearing, and go for full guardianship, which is what predominantly happens in Hawaii. Some other issues that we've discussed is that right now, to get a guardianship hearing or a conservatorship hearing, it can take over a month, maybe even 2 months, which can be a long time. and these hearings can be pushed back and pushed back. So we're also looking into how can we shorten the time span between hearings, which usually involves getting more judges and more resources to the judiciary. We've discussed that there is an issue relating to basically individuals that are deemed incapacitated in hospitals, and then they become stuck in that hospital and they don't exit for sometimes over a year. So that's a very particular problem that we're looking into trying to fix. We've also had issues like basically, whenever you want to get a guardianship or a conservatorship, it costs money. And it can cost thousands of dollars to do. And sometimes it's required to do for the individual to continue with services or have financial stability and things like that. And so the cost can be a hurdle for some of our population. We do know that as our population grows older, we're going to have a big boom of individuals that are elderly that may need to use the system that could tax it as well. So we want to prepare for that. And we do know and identified that essentially neighbor islands have a lot of resource issues when it comes to interacting with this system. In particular, a lot of guardianships require capacity evaluation. So if you want to take, you want to basically deem somebody incapacitated, you have to then do a capacity study on that individual. And on neighbor islands, there's just nobody to do those. And if there are individuals to do those, it can cost a lot of money. And the person looking to get guardianship has to pay that. It's not free and it's not provided by the court. So these are all hurdles that we're trying to see ways that we can fix and kind of help. We also know that emergency guardianship is not functioning as intended, at least in the probate court side of it. And I should roll back really quickly. In guardianship and conservatorship, the probate court does both guardians and conservators, and then family court will only do guardianship. And typically they do it for minors, hence family court. And so what we found is that in the probate court, a lot of times emergency guardianship, which is, individuals that really need to have a guardian appointed immediately because of a medical emergency or things like that, it can take a month, maybe even 2 months to get appointed, which emergencies need to be a lot faster than that. So we're looking into what can be done to speed that up. It sounds like it's a resource issue, but we're still digging into it. As well as we found that it can be hard if you already are. So let's say I'm a person already that has become a guardian. So someone is, I'm subject of guardianship. So someone has control over my finances and things like that. It's hard if I don't like my guardian or if I want to change or terminate it. How do I do that? And we found that that's actually not an easy thing to do. It typically requires a lawyer, and that is a hurdle to individuals' due process rights. So we're looking into issues like that. We're also looking into the fact that, for example, Hawaii, there's limited guardianship and there's full guardianship. Basically, full guardianship means we take all of your rights away. You have no capacity. You can't make decisions for yourself. You can't choose where you live. You can't vote. You can't do basically anything without the guardian saying so. Limited guardianship allows for a unique way where the court can basically look at your capacity and choose which rights you get to keep and what things you get to do. So you get to work with the individual's capacity. However, in Hawaii, it's actually easier to get full guardianship than it is to get limited guardianship. So it's easier to take more rights away from the individual than less. And so we're trying to look into why that is and how we could maybe change the procedure so that's not the case and that limited guardianships are more used in our state. And essentially, there are a little bit more problems, but these are kind of a high overview of all the problems we've identified. I don't want to just rant at you guys for too long. Our next steps are to look at how to actually fix these problems. So at this point, we've identified them. We're now going to look at what education we can do, what legislative measures we could introduce in either this session or the next one, as well as what procedural changes the courts can use. And the last thing to highlight too is like when it comes to procedural changes, those shouldn't take legislation. That's just rule changes within the judiciary on the family court or the probate court side. And we haven't completely gotten rid of the uniform law. For example, there's a section of the uniform law that deals with grievances. And so in the discussion that we've had, we're actually going to try to adopt the grievance section of the uniform law into Hawaii's rules. So we're not completely getting rid of the uniform law. We're just not promoting it as its entirety in the 265 pages. But anyways, I know that's a lot, and I'm happy to take any questions and provide clarification if needed.
All right. Thanks a lot. That was really interesting, especially the part about the, the limited being harder than the full coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any questions Let's see, I got a hand up with the EOA conference.
John, it's Caroline again. We have a question here from Bill. Bill, go ahead.
What are the inexpensive alternatives to guardianship and conservatorship that was mentioned?
Perfect. So there's things like surrogate decision making. We're trying to start implementing things like supported decision making. I don't know all the names off the top of my head, but there are things like medical waivers that you can power of attorneys and things like that. So those are the less expensive and less invasive alternatives. They're not always going to work, but they can work in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Can we labor, or what do you call that? The legislature to provide funds so that the court can do the investigation or the involvement in this guardianship and conservatorship? You said they don't want to get involved. Why is that?
So they can't get involved in certain types of education because courts cannot basically teach professionals how to do their jobs, or the lawyers in this case. So the courts have to be very careful on what they can and cannot get involved in. In the particular case of what you mentioned, they can get involved in what is best suited for the individual. But the problem is that if you come to the court already saying, I want guardianship, you petition for guardianship. They can't then tell you, no, we're going to do XYZ instead. You petition for guardianship. So that's what we're talking about today. They could deny it, but that's about all they could do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Did you have any specific requests for us to keep on a lookout, some proposed legislation, or is it just, just sharing your update?
Yeah, I did want to share the update, but also we're definitely I hope that we're going to be able to work fast enough with our group. You folks know how working groups can go. I hope before this year we can at least get some pieces of legislation in for this coming year. But there will be, from what I can tell, I still have to discuss a lot with our group. It'll most like, if there is legislation, it'll be piecemeal. So it won't be one large packet. It'll be, these different topics, fixing this problem here, fixing this problem here. And we will definitely, as we get all that information, inform the group.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, moving right along. Let's see. Next on our agenda, just announcements. Unless anybody has any little comments they want to share. Seeing none. Okay, so our next meeting will be October 4th. Probably same time. And of course, if you would have any ideas for a topic or you'd like to present, please let myself or Senator Moribaki know. We will be, I think kind of the general consensus is we're going to be looking at a Kupuna Caucus bill package, probably not till November. So it's going to be but we'll keep you updated on that process. And see, yeah, if anything comes up between now and October 4th, please feel free to reach out. But if not, thank you everyone for joining and have a great weekend.
Hey, one more thing.
Great.
Representative Chen, yes, thank you, Jack Lewin here. So is it the same Zoom invite every time, or will be Charles or somebody sending out a new one for October?
It's the same link every time, but there's a different agenda, but it's always going to be the exact same link.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, so you can probably just copy the same one and just plug it in.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.